What's going on, guys? My name is Christopher and welcome to It's Complicated, the show where I talk about and showcase wristwatches. So if you love watches like I do, you're going to want to subscribe to the show. Today, we're asking the question, why is a Rolex so expensive? Here we go. So why is a Rolex watch so expensive? Have they always been this expensive? And if not, why are they so expensive right now? I know a dentist who bought a Rolex Oyster Date brand new way back in 1973. And you know what he paid for it? $175. There's his original receipt. He still has box papers, etc., etc. If you take that $175 and adjust it for inflation to today's dollars, that's about $992, a little under $1,000. Now, this guy recently had this watch appraised for a little under $4,000. That being said, he hung on to the original bracelet. He's had it the whole time. He's the first owner. He has box papers, the whole 9 yards. And here's an example of why you hear so many people tell you that a Rolex is a good investment is guys like this. They bought a watch in 1973 for $175 and today it's worth $4,000. That's pretty good turnaround, you know what I mean? But that's not always the case, is it? Because once people knew that you were supposed to start hanging onto your baseball cards, the price, they all tanked. I don't look at a Rolex as an investment. I just think it is a luxury item. But that being said, you can usually get all of your money back if you buy smart. Now, Rolex doesn't make the Oyster Date anymore with the manual wind and everything. And if they did, you know it wouldn't cost under $1,000 like this watch would if you adjust for inflation. It wouldn't even cost what it got appraised for, $4,000. They actually want about $5,700 for the closest thing you can find to a Rolex Oyster Date, which is the Rolex Oyster Perpetual 39 mil. There's really no question that a Rolex was a lot more affordable back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. So what happened? Why are they so expensive now? Is Rolex just charging 5 times what they should be because they know they can get away with it? Is that really what's going on here? Well, I think the answer is a little more complicated than just looking at inflation, looking at 1970s money versus today's money. It's a little more tricky than that. Throughout the years, Rolex has made countless changes to their watches, a lot of improvements, different case materials. Now they have their own gold foundry, their own steel foundry, their own science division. Let's take a look at that Rolex Oyster Date versus the Rolex Oyster Perpetual 39 mil that they still make today. These watches don't share the same case size, they don't share the same case material, they don't share the same crystal material, they don't share the same water resistance, they don't share the same movement. I mean, hell, the Oyster Date was a manual wind. They don't share the same dial material, they don't share the same lume material, the indices are different. Everything about the construction of the watch is entirely different than it was in 1973. And throughout the years, when Rolex made these improvements, they increased the price a little bit. Now, I know there's more to that, and we're going to get to that in a second. And Rolex isn't the only brand that you could take a look in 1973 dollars and say, well, it should only cost this much. The Omega Speedmaster in 1973 cost $320. You adjust that for inflation, and you have $1,800 in today's dollars, and that watch MSRP is $5,200. Because just like the Rolex, the Omega has seen a lot of little improvements throughout the years. So again, maybe inflation isn't the greatest argument as to why Rolex, Omega, Patek, Jaeger-LeCoultre, these kind of watches cost so much money. Just like with any big brand, when you buy a Rolex watch, you're paying for the watch, you're paying for the case materials, you're paying for the design, the movement, and yes, you are paying for the Rolex name. That's business. You're paying for all their machines, their science division, their gold foundry, their steel foundry, their advertising campaigns. You're paying a little bit for all of that. And I think that is really where that extra gap comes from. There's a lot of other shit that Rolex has to charge for to keep their business running. Because Omega, Rolex, JLC, these are all just businesses with profit margins and business strategies. And let's say Rolex's markup is 30%, well, then you're gonna pay 30% above what it costs them to make that watch. And in the cost of that watch is all those other things I talked about before, like the gold foundry and all the advertising they do. That being said, a fine timepiece, a luxury timepiece from a trusted brand isn't exactly what I would call a waste of money. These things do tend to hold their value very well if you buy smart. So it's not like you're just throwing your money in the fucking toilet. Many watch collectors buy many different expensive watches and end up flipping them later because life turns up snake eyes for them and they just have to get out of the watch. Now let's take something like a really nice TV. You know, in 10 years, that really nice TV that you just shelled out $2,500 for is gonna be worth like $800. So a lot of watch collectors justify their purchases if they're smart and they know what they're doing and saying, well, yeah, I have this watch, but if I need to get out of it, I can get out of it later. And then you have people worrying about the Rolex bubble and is there gonna be a bubble? Are these things gonna absolutely be worthless one day? I really, really doubt it. Like I said, these watches are expensive for a reason. And yeah, sure, again, you are paying for extra stuff, especially now that Rolex is keeping their stainless steel sports models at such high MSRP. There's no more negotiating with those watches when you go into an authorized dealer. And a lot of people think that's shitty, myself included. Who doesn't love a great negotiation? And those are my thoughts on the matter. Let me know what you guys think. I think this Submariner date just on its own has gone up over $1,000 in the last 10 years. Do you guys think there is a ceiling for some of these prices? Let me know. And that wraps up another episode of It's Complicated. Don't forget to subscribe to the show, like this video, share it with all your friends, and I'll see you next time on another episode of It's Complicated.